Awesome. Well, hello everyone in TB land. This is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. The time is 7:40 and I call this meeting to order. We are all in attendance here, so that's great. To have everyone here. We will forego a pledge of allegiance in regards to being able to do that on Zoom, but we're doing it in spirit. So folks, you should have the agenda before you. Is there any additions or deletions that you would like to see to the agenda? Hearing none from anyone else, I'll just make up, I'm going to put in there something that just came up since I did create the agenda, is just, to quickly talk about, vegetative maintenance over the winter. So that, that would fall under bike path maintenance, just let folks know. So with that, move on to the meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the meeting minutes?
Yeah. Yep.
Any comments, questions?
Good.
All right. Can you entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion.
Alan?
I'll second it.
And Dan. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Christine, thank you for putting together those minutes and getting them up online. Greatly appreciate that.
Will you turn that off?
So next on the agenda would be public comment. I don't believe there's anybody here to that would from the public that would want to make a comment. But Brian Friel, please let us know if someone has entered or does have a comment.
Yeah, right now you got nothing.
Cool. All right, we'll move ahead into bike path maintenance funds balance. So everyone should have received an email that I did get from Anne earlier this week. And so she was able to give us that balance. And let me see if I can pull that up. So at, we have, I just pulling this down. We had a total fund balance, including this winter's taxes that millage that was coming in of $255,734 and 77 cents. But we did spend $108,658 and 62 cents this year as far as maintenance is concerned, and so that leaves us at 147,706 and 76 and 15 cents in regards to our balance. So we have roughly $150,000 as of right now. So any questions or comments on that?
Brian, I do have a question on that. I know our balance is there, but vaguely, what do you think we need to have in reserve for unexpected things and things that might pop up, like a damage to one of our bridges or a sinkhole, or just maybe DTE digs and rips up part of our bike path? Remember, like the issue we had at the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, we're accruing, a total of about, $94,000 per year. And so that doesn't go that far. We're putting as much as we can into, preventative maintenance, as well as, the general maintenance that needs to be done. That doesn't leave much for unexpected items like you're talking about there. We have to try and plan accordingly and budget over the years right now. So, if we do want to be able to have a reserve for items that are more unexpected, we need to re-examine that. One thing I would mention is that I believe that there's metro funds, or something that the utilities pay into the township in case they do happen to damage our paths or other infrastructure when they're taking care of some of their lines.
Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? All right, moving on into bike path maintenance. We already talked about that we did take care of some of the asphalt paths this past fall, and that there might be more additionally that are done as far as full depth in the springtime, but there's nothing as of right now. Bike path bridges, again, we'll need to set something up in order to examine like what the potential cost would be for it taking care of the structural issues on the bridge over the thoroughfare canal. I know that there's some members that need to be taken care of on that, and that will also require ripping up the deck. So West Pfeiffer had mentioned that before, but we need to get in touch with the rest of the township board to see how they feel about this and what they'd like to do moving forward. Because I know that they've been looking at, do we still continue to go with who we've worked with in the past and have those great relationships, or are we going to try and bid some of the stuff out and see what type of costs, if we get any cost reductions at all. So we'll need to be working on that in the new year to see as far as what those costs will be for any of those bridges. So the other item under maintenance that I wanted to bring up was, I got an email from Tony Gray, who's referred to us from Derek Thiel. So Tony Gray takes care of a lot of permits and such, and he also takes care of some of the vegetation along the roadways and places over the winter. So he contracts with TNT, and so he told us that usually the TNT will come through and take care of the overgrowth that interferes with the bike paths during the winter because people are using them less. Trees are bare, so it's easier to see what's infringing on there. And generally the cost has been $2,500. He doesn't know exactly how much it is yet. He wasn't able to give me any more additional information, but I thought I'd share that with the commission and see do we want to entertain doing this again this year. Questions, comments?
Well, I think we have to.
Yeah.
I think it's a good.
Okay, so I will.
Sorry. The only thought I had when I was reading that is, like sometimes highways will have sponsor this route. And I wonder if this could be something that we could do a sponsor this block, either to pay TNT, or could we even consider having people doing that? If it's a low brush like stuff, that seems like perhaps something that could be done by volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, to be looking at that and know that we do have the maintenance fund that, that stuff's supposed to cover. So it's like, I mean, in the future, we could, I'm not sure if we'd want to, but, I guess we could entertain the notion of, adopt a part. But I do like also the idea is for just, the volunteers. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody's been out on the paths lately, if they've seen areas that, really needs to be addressed. I've been stuck in my house lately, so I have not been out there as much. But if everyone can kind of take a look and see if there's areas that need to be done and see how much there is, we can let Tony know about that.
Hey, Carl, what is our liability on something like that?
You need to sign waivers. And when a volunteer is doing work as we did with Greenways Open Space in early November there, we had a signed release waiver from every volunteer. I would run this by Thomas Sorty, however, because if there are some things you cannot delegate as a government entity or that are necessary, and this may arguably fall within that group, but at a minimum, they're going to need waivers. To me, it doesn't look like it's all that complicated to be able to do that, particularly along Meridian. And the kinds of volunteers, some of it is pruning and some of it may be a little more complicated with a chainsaw. But from what I see, and I drive from Ferry to Grow every day, you certainly could benefit from some trimming, but the number of miles that we have on the bike path could certainly add up to a day or two of work by volunteers, but it's not that complicated. You just have to have people with the right skill sets that are prepared to do that and to use the equipment safely and get the waivers. So at a minimum, we need to start with waivers, and I suggest that that's not that complicated. You know, pruning saws and some of the other things are up to a chainsaw would probably be the biggest portion. I just did that with a Greenways open space trail that parallels Manchester. It's about 400, 500 feet south, and we had some deadfall there. And when the scouts were back there doing their cleanup, I just took the chainsaw and cut some of the deadfall that had fallen over the trail. But again, that's something that's not terribly complicated, and I'd be willing to work with somebody on that. It doesn't take much. I'm wondering if it's just nothing more complicated sometimes than getting a step ladder or a pickup truck, and you can stand in the bed of the truck and take out the stuff. So, but I'm open for suggestions.
Well, Carl, I like that idea. Again, Rebecca,
me in the back of the
mentioning
pickup
it.
truck. You like the idea with me in the back of the pickup truck with a chainsaw? Love you too, brother.
In February.
Better you than me. No, no, I just meant that you seem to have some experience with that. So if you want to kind of take a lead in regards to seeing if this is feasible to do along the path, that could save us a few bucks.
Let me talk with Dale Ream about that. I'm supposed to see him next week. He's going to be in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then, of course, is off for the holidays, but I certainly would be able to talk to him about that. I talk to him a couple times a week, and that would be something that we could do. So.
Cool. So I will also email Tony and CC you on that, so that way, he's in the loop knowing what's going on.
Appreciate that. Disposal of the brush would probably be the more difficult part of that. But again, I can talk with Derek perhaps about that and Dale, and let's see what we can do going forward. It'd be easier than spending a lot of money. We just saved a significant amount of money on the connector between Ferry and Gage. Charlie Campo came in, and I think you're aware of that, Brian Pock, that he came in and ditched it for us. And it's fingers crossed, it's a pilot project. Let's see what it brings up in the springtime. But the water was an issue there, and Charlie did it for less than $4,000. And some of the bids and quotes we had were several times that they were eye-popping. So I'm big on volunteers and volunteering. Dan put together a great program with Dump the Junk. And I think volunteers are very, very easy to come by when you're looking at something like that. It's not a 3-day project. We could do that probably pretty easily. So yes, I'll run with it.
All right. Thank you both, Carl and Rebecca. So last item under maintenance that I had under here was a GIS inventory. So to let everyone know, I did meet with CE Rains, Dale Ream, as well as several others to talk about doing something similar to what we're doing, or that the township is doing with the sewer mains and the water mains, in regards to basically creating electronic maps that digitize where certain features are within Grosse Ile. So the aspect from this is that we already know where the paths are, but we don't know their condition. We know relatively where signs are, but we don't know exactly where they are, the type of sign they are, the quantity of those, which all of this can help us as far as doing asset management, especially being able to determine the costs for replacing such items, and just having a better idea from a planning perspective. So we're looking at that, as well as working with Rains in regards to doing annual asset management, which is a fancy way of saying that we're going to go out in a golf cart and rate the road, rate the paths on a scale of 1 to 5, and be able to see how the paths are faring as far as their condition, and being able to apply a general type of treatment and costs associated with that. So that way, moving forward, we know the cost it would be to replace these, and we can figure out if the paths are staying in good or fair condition, or if they're deteriorating faster than we assume that they would be. And that way we can make more educated decisions on better spending the maintenance funds. So probably next month I'll have more details on the cost for that, but it should be relatively inexpensive when we're talking about tech stuff. So we're also potentially utilizing data from Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, as well as the app collector that they've used. I know the township already has purchased a GPS unit that they could use for a lot of the DPS work. So there's some economies of scale that's already in play. So I'll have more to report next month. Let me know if you have any questions or comments on that. Hearing none, move into bike path safety issues. So I know Carl, Dan, and I have talked a bit about the Ferry and Meridian as far as some potential improvements at that area. I did give a list of potential improvements to Carl and Derek, and I know that we were going to look into setting up a meeting to talk more about an action plan. Carl, do you have anything to report on that?
Nothing further on that. We are getting close to the holiday. I can ask Derek on Monday if he'd have time to sit down and talk with us. Are you going to be available during the Christmas week, if you will?
Depending on the time and such, I might be able to make some time available, especially if it's a Zoom or a phone call.
Well, yeah, I think that would be wonderful, and I think Derek has always been very responsive and easy to work with. So I will ask him about again on tomorrow. I can ask him what we can do.
Sounds good. Yeah, I also asked Derek about participating with us on the creation of a full bicycle pedestrian plan, so that way DPS and BPAC and other commissions can coordinate efforts over the long term. And so he said that he'd be happy to coordinate on that as well.
Nice thing about Derek is he had a lot of wonderful experience as the city manager for Gibraltar, and fully understands what we need with these kinds of projects.
Gotcha. So other item under safety issues is the sign modernization. So I know Carl and I and Dan have been talking a little bit about that. Brought in John to ask about potential sign costs. I believe, John, you were saying that it'd be better to connect with John Kime to find out what we have in the shop already, or what we're able to purchase wholesale as far as sign costs.
That's right. Yeah, I think John would be a good asset in that regard.
So I think the sign modernization will kind of fall into place along with the GIS inventory that I was talking about before. I talked with Alan recently. He's interested in looking at that too. So I think that over this winter or early spring, we'll be able to come up with a plan for how we're going to modernize the signage to make it consistent, safe, and the least impact on our residents. Okay, we'll move on to bike path enhancements. Is there anything that people would like to report on in that regard?
I have nothing on the fix-it station, Brian.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to new path updates. The first one being the Gibraltar Bay connector. So for those who are not familiar, this is a project that we're looking at being able to move a fence along the eastern side of the airport to allow a service road to be repurposed as a primitive trail that could connect from our Grow Road bike path to the Gibraltar Bay unit of the International Wildlife Refuge. So Carl and I and Mike Duker have been talking about those projects, and been able to survey the land a little bit more, look at a couple different alternatives. And Mike is on board. Like, if we can come up with the cost for moving this fence, then he would be okay with us using this, and it would basically turn into an open space style primitive path. Related to that, I'm just getting cost estimates in regards to putting in that new fence. So I did talk to one contractor today who's supposed to give me an estimate, for later this week or early next week in regards to the costs. So he's got some creative ideas on how to get that 10-foot clearance with a less budget. But the lower we can get that cost, the more likely we can pick up most of those costs potentially through a grant or other philanthropy. So I have Dan working on a grant application that's run by the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, but it's a Ralph Wilson Legacy grant for up to $50,000. So we're going to see if we can land that as far as getting this path getting taken care of. Dan or Carl, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I'm just about there with the submission. I'm just waiting on some information from somebody.
I would simply add that if we can do something with the Ralph Wilson to do part of that anyway, the cost of the fence, moving the fence means pulling the fabric off and going through all of the growth that's there. There's some sections where that might make sense. There's a lot of sections where we just have too much invasion by vegetation that's intertwined in there, and it would be more expensive to try and move it than it would be just to put in a fresh fence on the west side of that existing road right now. Mike did take us around to the very west side where the canal in the end of the to the end of the runway, going from basically Grow Road all the way down to Gibraltar Bay and then across. But it seems that the runway ends fairly close to the water, and the minimum clearance on that is prohibitive for a 10-foot fence. There's just not an ability to do that. And it strikes me that while that is a great place and a lot to offer down there, particularly with an observation deck and some kind of a path there, that was just spectacular. The reality is that we're not going to be able to do much with the south end of the runway because of the clearance problem. But the water on both sides there, both the lake or pond on the inside of the perimeter, as well as Gibraltar Bay, it's beautiful down there. It's one of the most scenic places I found on Grosse Ile. But it looks like if we can get some of the Ralph Wilson or other grant money, let's go ahead and push a fence, even if it's only a third of the way or halfway from the Grow Road intersection, East River, down to the Wildlife Center. Put a gate there and stop, and then pick up when we can get some more funds. Maybe take a bite of the apple a little bit at a time, as opposed to trying to do it all because of the amount of money that was, I guess, engineered would be the best way to put it. And we're talking over $330,000 if memory serves me correct.
That's a lot of money. It's $417,000.
Yeah, that was on the upside with all of the engineering and stuff.
Yep.
But again, we're not putting I-75 through Yosemite. I don't believe that we need to have some of those things. A primitive trail makes sense, but the biggest cost factor was the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brian, is this person that you're waiting on the estimate, is that for new fencing or is that to move the fencing?
That's for new fencing.
Okay.
And at least one idea that they have is that you can do a shorter fence, but include wire above it in order to get, achieve the 10-foot, height that you need. But supposedly that would be a lot cheaper. And that's what's done at Metro Airport. So I told us, well, hey, if that gets the approval of Mike Duker and, the FAA, then I'm cool with that. Anything to try to save some of those costs.
So am I.
So the one thing that Mike joked around about, and I took seriously based on that, is he's like, well, you can't, because we were talking about the western side of the airport that Carl was just talking about, and how it pretty much dead ends. You don't have enough access, along the water, to put in an observation deck or something, right at the shore's edge. It's like, well, with the landing patterns, it's like you'd have to go out into the water with something. And so, again, this is nothing short term, but I'm a planner, I'm a dreamer. And it thought, it's like, well, you know what? That would be kind of cool if at some point we were able to secure grants and basically be able to do a boardwalk out into Gibraltar Bay that would connect over to the wildlife refuge on the eastern side. So essentially, you'd be able to create a loop around the airport.
Yep, that's what I was just thinking.
And so, you know, again, that's not something I'm moving forward with right now, but just, you know, an idea to keep in the back of our heads, especially if down the road, some of that property that is currently owned by the airport, if, you know, they want to you know, relinquish control of that and turn that more over into natural space into perpetuity, and we might be able to get some grants and, you know, do some acquisition and some development from that standpoint.
Cool. So when do you think, honestly think you could have that information about that other contractors sometime next week?
I hope so. Yeah, I talked to them today, so we'll see. And again, these are just, it's ballpark estimate costs. It's just to see if, you know, it's around the same amount that CE Rains put in, or if is it less. So, you know, and just for you know, just for context, I believe CE Rains talked about the development of 3,200 feet of 10-foot chain link fence, along with 3 gates that were able to be moved to allow airport access, you know, for the vehicles. I believe that was, you know, around $150,000. So, you know, that's our goal, is to try and get below $150,000 with you know, what he might be, you know, talking about with an estimate.
What about, just throwing this out there, throwing it on the wall, what about if we leave the existing fence up and just have them put a new fence in, and as we come up with funds, tear down the old fence?
For the most part, I think that's what we're talking about. I think we just want to be able to cut a few holes in the other fence in regards to security, to be allowed people to get out rather than being in a long tunnel that's you know, 3,200 feet from Grow Road. So, you know, if you could have a couple spots where, you know, a police vehicle, not police vehicle, but an off-road vehicle from the police would be able to get in for an emergency situation, I think that would be doable.
Cool.
So last thing I have under the new developments, and, you know, this is a continuation of what was talked about last month. So if you recall, Mary from the Downriver Link Greenways came and presented to us and talked about some of the initiatives. And Brian Friel, if you'd allow me to share my screen, I'll just show a map of a proposal that they're seeking comment on. So while I'm waiting on that, I'll, you know, just start describing the area. So essentially what the consultants came up with based on context is very similar to what we'd been advocating before. So they're looking at, you know, using a sidewalk along West River on the east side of the road, you know, along the golf course, to connect into the West River Grosio Parkway connector. The roadway has a sidewalk on it, and that wraps up, and then there's a sidewalk on the south side of the Free Bridge. And so, you know, if you're, you know, going from Trenton, you cross the river on the south side, come down the connector, and be able to take a sidewalk right to Water's Edge. From there, they're talking about another sidewalk on the north side of Bellevue that would connect up to Meridian. And they're talking about, you know, some wayfinding signage along the way that would help connect people, you know, from Trenton to Water's Edge, and then the Macomb Street District and over to the Macomb Overlook. Oh, cool, I can share my screen now. So this is what we're talking about here as far as the path. I think it makes sense because this is already sidewalk up here. this is sidewalk here. So, and as far as, you know, the right of way is a little bit tight along Bellevue. So if they're able to squeeze in a sidewalk, I think that's great for pedestrians as well as, you know, beginning cyclists that might not be as comfortable riding on the road. And then for folks that are more comfortable, you know, more experienced, well, you know, they can continue to ride along Bellevue, which is, you know, somewhat comfortable as it is right now. Or they could, you know, choose to ride slower on the sidewalk. What I did ask as far as questions is, you know, one, you know, was it deemed infeasible to have a sidewalk that would connect up to Chicory? So if you recall, I think it was Miss Dobos. I apologize if I'm butchering the last name, but we had a, you know, someone from the public last month, you know, talking about access, you know, from Chicory and from Waterway as far as the connections and getting to the path. So, you know, if that would be feasible, that would be nice to have that connection. So that way they can get, you know, it'd be a long way around, but, you know, they would have access to our bike path system. Secondly, I asked about what type of crossing treatment they'd be looking at doing at Meridian. Hopefully, you know, having something enhanced in that area. They didn't give me any specifics, but they will reach out about that. The last item I asked about would be if they could include potentially some shared lane markings or sharrows along Bellevue Road to, you know, educate both bicyclists and motorists that, you know, to be expecting bicyclists on the road in this area, as well as that would open it up for more grant funding in the regards to that we are thinking about both bicyclists and pedestrians with this path, you know, with these improvements. We're not just trying to shove all the bicyclists onto the sidewalk. I know that would be something that MDOT and some other granting agencies might look down upon.
Ryan, what side of the street on Bellevue are they talking about putting the sidewalk in the north side or the south side?
I believe it was the north side.
Okay, that's what I was hoping.
Yeah, it's included in the email that I sent everyone earlier, yesterday, I believe. So if you have comments, you know, please let me know either now or, you know, in the next day or two, because I'd like to get back to them, as well as, you know, obviously communicate with Jim Budney and, you know, Dale and make sure they're okay with this as well. But you know, if everyone is on board with this, the next step for the consultant would be to try and you know, look at those engineering level drawings and see what the cost would be for this project, and potentially, you know, build those engineering drawings. I mean, like produce a set of engineering drawings that can be used for grant applications.
Okay. That was my next question. How are we going to pay for this?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't have, you know, funding in place for this yet, but if you recall, I believe Mary said last week, or she might have done this on the call that I had with then, you know, Supervisor-elect Budney and Carl and others, in saying that we have, you know, the Downriver Link Greenways already received funding from Ralph Wilson to do this assessment and do these engineering drawings. So you'd think that somebody that is looking to fill gaps, if they give you money to be able to do the engineering stuff to, you know, to get you to the grant funding, that they're probably going to help along the way with the actual grant funding itself. So we're hopeful in that regard that, you know, they would, Ralph Wilson might throw in some funds, as well as we might be able to compete for Natural Resources Trust Fund or Transportation Alternatives Program funding for implementing the project.
Would there be any funding to help us connect to Meridian to get to the Gibraltar Bay?
So, I mean, technically, yes, you know, there's funding available, but I don't know from the Wilson Foundation if they're willing to, you know, do that match. And so what we're trying to do with the Gibraltar Bay unit, you know, connector right now is do it on the cheap. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if we're just doing what we're proposing over there, you know, as is, kind of cheaper, I'm not sure if it would be competitive, because generally they're looking for you know, paved trails that are, you know, 10 feet wide and have 2-foot shoulders, and you're talking about a lot more strings attached to those funds. And it's, you know, it's not bad. I'm just thinking that if we're trying to accomplish multiple projects here, I would think that people would probably be more apt to be satisfied with Gibraltar Bay unit being more of a primitive trail as opposed to, having a, more Cadillac version over there and having nothing on Bellevue or other roads within Groseal.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, shall go into, and I apologize, I'm trying to find my agenda over here.
Education encouragement.
Yeah, education encouragement campaigns. So walk to school, bike to school day, I believe that's on hiatus for right now. We don't know what's going on as far as the school district with, if something comes up, we can try and, do more in May. That's when the bike to school day is supposed to be. For right now, I'd say put that one on hold. As far as the bicycle safety class, Christine, mentioned at last meeting that she's interested in, helping put this together. I just put her in touch with League of Michigan Bicyclists. We reached out to Kim O'Farrell, and she's on board for, publicizing anything that we come up with. So, Christine, is there other things that you'd like to report on as far as the bicycle safety class?
Nothing yet. I'm just been 2 days ago since you sent that email from Aaron, so we can try to find an instructor, and we've not heard anything yet. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. I also CC'd Ben Foyt, who's a Groseal resident who had reached out to us and had a similar goal for that. So might hear from him as well as with the possibility of helping out. All right. Is there any other education or encouragement activities that we need to talk about? Okay. Is there any upcoming events or other items that we need to publicize? Hearing none, I can move.
Put a snowplow on your bicycle.
What's that, Dan?
Put a snowplow on your bicycle.
It can be done.
Brian, one thing I think that might be of some value, at some point when you look at what our fund balance is right now, 147,000, and our burn rate is roughly 2/3 of that, very quickly we're going to need to look at doing some kind of a millage, whether a mill right now brings in a little over $600,000 on an annual basis. When we go in looking at our budget next month, I think we're going to have to take a long, hard look about maybe having not only a millage vote, not for an entire mill, but certainly a millage vote. But part of that's also going to be looking at maybe getting some citizen input in terms of what they want. We did the meeting with Douglas Drive, the platted but unimproved road that runs parallel to Park Lane or Parkway, and is essentially telephone poles and utility poles. It strikes me that if we're going to be able to pass a millage, and I don't know what numbers anybody's looking at, a quarter of a mill is $150,000 a year. Do we then turn it into maintenance and path expansion? And what does the community or members of the community really want? We had, as I recall, over 30 people come out when we were looking at perhaps putting a trail in on Douglas Drive, but those were all affected homeowners, adjoining property owners. Water's Edge and the rec department just had public meetings on their 5-year plan where they're going forward. And I'm just throwing out the idea that maybe in January, we're going to want to sit down and look at A, what do we need for maintenance, and B, what can we reasonably request the voters to approve for expansion of the bike path. I frankly got a little sticker shock when I saw the engineering proposal for the path between Grow Road and Gibraltar Bay, but I think we all did. And I'm just looking at some public input as to where they would like us to go with any kind of bike path that should be expanded.
I totally agree with you, Carl. That's one of the things, as I'm mentioning with conversations with Derek Thiel about DPS, about putting together a plan. And you've also encouraged us to work with open space and with recreation. I know Chad Novak is a good advocate that we have over there, and we've been trying to work on ways to team up on stuff. So I think that would be something that we need to do is figure out one, what are the costs for maintenance, and that relates back to, again, if we're able to do this assessment and start to figure out year after year what's going to cost to be able to keep some of our paths in good repair, and then what do we want to do moving forward as far as new infrastructure, and what do those costs, and then based on that figure out what that magic number is as far as a millage or other things, and hopefully being able to leverage those dollars to go farther. So what I just brought up is it's old now, but it's something that BPAC did a few years back, and that was start to create a map of both existing and planned bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So you could see here in the reddish area, these are paths that were going to be built at the time. So this connection to Elizabeth Park wasn't done at that point. You can see where we have this Douglas Drive aspect on the map, which again is not there anymore. But when you talk about East River Road, Bellevue, or at the time people talked about Groseal Parkways, maybe you want that as far as a connection directly to Sunrise Park. But the point is that being able to map what we've been hearing and being able to vet that and see what people think about those potential improvements, I think is necessary if we're going to be asking people to potentially put their hard-earned dollars, into additional infrastructure. So I just bring this up because we have something to start from, and then maybe we can put our heads together here and figure out what's the best approach for starting that plan, and then doing some public outreach during these winter months. Carl, we were going to move into Township Liaisons report. Is there anything that you'd like to let us know what's going on with the township at large or with the board?
Yeah, I indicated that to the board at our last meeting that we are pursuing the Ralph Wilson Fund. Dan has talked about that tonight. Everybody is interested in fund money. I don't know what kind of support we're going to get for during these unpredictable times. I know that our grant money from the state of Michigan to the township is going to be reduced. This year, it might be reduced, pick a number, 20, 30%, which is significant. But so far, we have not had a lot of projections about a large negative shortfall or anything like that that would impact directly asking for more money. I know that road millage is on the minds of some of the 2020 team. They were focusing on roads and how to improve the roads. So there might be some competition there. The big thing is for me to get support for the a millage that would come out and to determine what the number is. And the sooner we can do that, then the sooner we can start a public education. And I'm encouraged by the number of people that have been using the bike paths. Certainly reduced now that we have snow and ice out there, but gosh, there were times coming and going from work, I would routinely count 10, 12. I think at one point I had 20 people I counted in the distance I travel along the path from Ferry down to Grove Road. And I was seeing people out there every day. And today I see people out walking. So there's support for it. We just got to find a sweet spot where there's support for some millage and an idea what they're going to be getting for it, and hopefully do that sooner so that we're not competing with other projects.
Carl, one thing I've noticed at 6 o'clock in the morning is the number of people walking with flashlights or lanterns on top of their caps and stuff like that. There's just, I see these lights on there. Where are all these people doing?
Well, those might be some of the deer too, Dan. We can't discount that. But I do think that we do need to do an education program and start explaining what we do with our funds and what we need for maintenance and what the possibilities of expansion are. And I'm not advocating a full mill by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the first thing we need to do is to find out what is available from the community. What are they willing to support? But I agree with you. There are people out there virtually all the time.
I'm just amazed, since the time change, they see all these people out there with the lights, which is safety, which is good.
Yeah.
And I think we got to commend our citizens for that.
So that concludes my report. Just Ralph Wilson is what we were focusing on. And Dan, I'm glad to see that you're moving forward on that. I know we've got a deadline coming up on that.
January 8th.
It's just going to be good to see some progress on it. That'd be great.
Great. Thank you, Carl. As far as the chair's report, only thing I'll mention is that SEMCOG and the DNR just had a roundtable webinar today where they talked about utilizing different grant resources. So from the DNR side, there is the trust fund, which is one of the largest ones available. Moving into future years, that can be up to $500,000 for development and unlimited amount for acquisition of stuff, so that that could work in regards to recreation or open space. There's the land conservation and water fund available. Those are some federal dollars that are passed through, as well as there's the recreation passport. So those are three different grants that they're kind of kicking off in January, and the deadline is April 1st. Again, I don't know if we're ready to apply for those, this time around, but it's April 1st every single year. So we might want to start developing and see if we're not in the cycle for this year, maybe we can get in for next. And so there's a recording of that webinar, and I encourage all of BPAC to take a look at it, especially if you're interested in helping apply for different funding sources. So that concludes my report.
Brian, was that in your text today?
Yeah, that was.
Could you resend that to me? Because when I was driving, I kind of deleted it accidentally.
No problem. I didn't hear anything about driving and texting at the same time.
Well, I was parked.
So
drive.
Gotcha. So is there anything else that needs to be brought up before we conclude this meeting?
I have nothing.
Rebecca?
Nothing.
Christine?
Nothing.
John or Alan?
Nothing for Alan.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful holiday season. If I don't, talk or hear from you in the meantime, have a happy new year. And hopefully starting in January, we're gonna get moving on getting some grants done and getting some planning done. So everyone walk, bike, and drive safe.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas.